All right, for our second video, we're going to be looking at what's called completing the square. This is going to help us kind of manipulating around our equations for circles and solving or discovering new things about those equations. So first off, we're going to review some things about factoring. Now, in a previous algebra class, you may or may not have gone over some factoring methods, so we're going to do kind of a quick review or a quick crash course on what some of this looks like. So if we have this expression, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, that's the same as saying that little value a plus b, all of that, squared. And similarly, this one is really close to the same thing, only this has a plus, this has a minus, so that just changes in here. It'd be a minus b squared. So those are just kind of some quick reference guides. If you can get something to this form, a plus b, that amount squared, it'll turn into this. Same thing, if you get it to a minus b, all of that squared, it'll look like this. And it kind of goes both ways. This one will turn to this one will turn to this, and so on. So let's try foiling this one. For one, it does look like this one, a plus b squared, only a is w and b is 3. But instead of using that shortcut, let's first check it with foiling. So what this is saying, w plus 3 squared means w plus 3 times another w plus 3. You'll notice there's two of them, w plus 3 right here times itself right here. Now when we FOIL, remember that means first, outer, inner, last. So the first numbers, w times w, that would give us w squared. The outer numbers, w times 3, that would give us 3w. The inside numbers, 3 times w, that would give us another 3w. And then the last numbers, 3 times 3, that would end up being 9. So that's, again, foiling it out. This piece times this piece would become this expression. Now, combining like terms, 3w plus 3w is actually 6w. So we can turn it into this expression. Now, again, as kind of our shortcut, notice how w times 3 times 2, right? We had a, b times 2, so w times 3 times 2 would become 6w, so that's the middle piece, like right there. 3 squared, like our b squared, 3 squared is 9, that's right here. And w squared, w is like our a from right here, so a squared is w squared right here. So this piece right here follows this pattern when we FOIL it out. So now we're going to look at kind of doing things in reverse. We're going to be factoring out some pieces. So when we're factoring a trinomial like this, or a little expression, we're saying over here we had w squared plus 6w plus 9. So we wanted to know which two numbers would multiply to this 9, and if we added them together would give us this 6. And that was 3 and 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 3 plus 3 is 6. So when we try it with this one, we're asking ourselves which two numbers are going to multiply to 16, and they're going to add to this negative 8. Well, the only two numbers that would work for that would be negative 4 and negative 4. If you add those together, it's negative 8. If you multiply them together, it's positive 16. So we can break it into y minus 4 and y minus 4. That y goes along with each of these two pieces. Y minus 4 here and y minus 4 here. So again, if we were to FOIL it out, if we were to multiply everything together, y and y is y squared, y and negative 4 is negative 4y. Negative 4 times y is another negative 4y, and negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Combine our two negative 4y's, and that would give us this negative 8y. This piece, though, y minus 4 and y minus 4, we can simplify down to y minus 4 squared. So this expression is the same as this expression. This piece is what's known as completing the square then. What we're trying to do is figure out what piece here would finish this or make this a square that would be the same as this amount. Or should I say, we're working up to completing the square. We're getting really close to it. So same thing, if we have our expression over here, x squared minus 10x plus 25, we're asking ourselves what two numbers will multiply to 25 and would add up to negative 10. Well, again, that's going to be negative 5 and negative 5. And because this time we're using x, we can put an x in front of each of those. Say it's x minus 5 and x minus 5. Those are our two factors. If we have this times this, it would become this piece. Now, x minus 5 times x minus 5 is the same as saying x minus 5 squared. So this blank piece right here is 5. That's what we're looking for to go into that piece. Now we're going to be looking at completing the square. So this is pretty much the same thing we've been doing, only we're working with a full equation, not just the expression. So the first thing we do, if we are given an equation like this, x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0, we want to get any of these constants away from the variables. So in this case, to get rid of this minus 7, we'd have to add 7 to both sides. That would make it look like this, x squared plus 6x equals 7. Now we need to take half of the x term and then square it and add that number to both sides. Well, our x term is 6x, or 6. We want half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. It would look something like this then. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 7 plus 9. We added 9 to both sides. Simplifying that down, combining our like terms, we'd get x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 16, because 7 plus 9 equals 16. Now I can factor this piece, this x squared plus 6x plus 9, into something like the x plus a squared equals this missing, or this last piece here. So like before, we're asking ourselves, what two numbers would multiply together to get 9 that would add together to make 6? That's going to be 3 and 3. And in this case, they're both positive. So put like a plus there. So I can complete our factor by putting an x in front of it. And this would be the factored form of this expression. So it would say x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 16. Or I can call this x plus 3 piece all one thing as x plus 3 squared equals 16. So we went from one kind of larger equation with x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0, and we were able to kind of simplify it down into some piece in parentheses squared equals another number, so 16 in this case. So let's do it again. Let's try completing the square for x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So remember, first step is get rid of that constant on both sides. So we subtract 1 from everywhere. So we get x squared plus 4x equals negative 1. We need to take half of 4, half of our x term, and then square it. Well, half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So we're adding 4 to all of the sides. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 1 plus 4. And negative 1 plus 4 we can simplify to 3. Okay, now when I factor this, I'm looking at this piece and this piece, and I'm saying what two numbers would multiply to this 4 that would add to this 4. And the only numbers are going to be positive 2 and positive 2. So I call my factors x plus 2 and x plus 2, and that equals 3. And again, I can simplify that to x plus 2 squared. This whole piece times itself, so x plus 2 squared equals 3. So this last piece here is our final answer. This is the completed square form. So what is the center and radius of the circle with the equation x squared minus 4x plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 equals 0? This is where that completing the square is going to come in handy. Okay, to do that, we're going to be completing the square for both our x pieces over here and our y pieces over here, so we can turn this into a standard form of a circle equation. So the first step is to get away any of the constants. So in this case, we're subtracting away that 9. Subtract 9 from both sides of that equation and it turns into this. Now we're going to group our x terms and our y terms together with parentheses. So you can see on mine I put the x ones together in blue and the y ones together in red. That way we can kind of group everything together. Now to complete the square on this x term, remember I want half of negative 4 is going to be negative 2. Square that, so negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So that's what I would be adding on to this piece, is a positive 4. Same thing with our y term over here, our y pieces. Half of negative 6 is negative 3. Square that, so negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So that's what I'm adding to my my y pieces. Now if I add a 4 over here and add 9 over here, I have to add both of those to this side. Negative 9 plus 4 and plus 9. Okay, just like I add 4 here, I add 4 on this side. I add 9 on this side, I add 9 on this side. That way our equation stays balanced. Now I'm going to rewrite all of this in a factored form. But first off, I'm going to simplify this side. Negative 9 plus 4 is going to be negative 5. Plus 9 is going to be positive 4. So all of this, I'm just going to make a note for myself that this comes out to 4. Now this x piece, again I'm thinking, what two numbers will multiply to 4 that will add to negative 4? So that's going to be negative 2 and negative 2. Over here I'm thinking, what two numbers are going to multiply to positive 9 that are going to add to negative 6? Now that's going to be negative 3 and negative 3. So when I put those into factored form, this would be x minus 2, each of these minus 2's, squared, plus y minus 3 squared, because I have minus 3 and minus 3, and this 4 goes right here. So now I have, I've rewritten this equation into a squared form. X minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4. And remember, 4, this piece here, is the same as saying 2 squared. So at this point, I can look at this and say, all right, my center is 2, 3, because minus this piece and minus this piece, so 2, 3. My radius is 2, because 4 is 2 squared. So when we complete the square with our circle equations and get them into this form, then we can find the center and the radius real easy. So let's do a couple more examples of that. Find the center and the radius of this circle. So first step, subtract this constant, the 4, off of both sides. So it turns into this. Group together our x pieces and our y pieces. Again, I did that in the blue and in the red for us to see. When I'm completing the square with this one, I have to take half of this, that's negative 2, square it, so negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, or plus 4. Same thing with this one. I have to take half of positive 2, and that's 1, square it. 1 times 1 is 1. So that's what I'm adding on there. So I added 4 and I added 1. So over here I have to add 4 and add 1. Now again, Negative 4 and positive 4 kind of cancel each other out. So what's left on this one is just the 1. When I'm factoring this piece out, I'm asking what two numbers will multiply to positive 4 that will add to negative 4. Well, that's going to be negative 2 and negative 2. Same question, what's going to multiply to positive 1 that will add to positive 2? And that's going to be positive 1 and positive 1. Those two numbers will multiply to this and add to this. So when I write this in factored form, I'm saying x minus 2 squared, that's this piece factored, plus y plus 1 squared, that's this whole piece factored, equals 1. That was this piece left over. So this would be my whole equation for the circle. Remember, 1 is the same as saying 1 squared. So my center is at 2, negative 1. So remember, it's y minus k. So this is y minus a negative 1. So my center is at 2, negative 1, and my radius is 1. And that all came from this equation. Last example. Find the center and radius of this circle. Well, again, like before, we'll start off by taking away this constant, this 51, from both sides. So subtract it away, so it looks like this. Now, we always want our x squared and y squared pieces to be alone. And right now, they have a 4 out in front of both of them. So we're going to divide every term, the whole thing, by 4. When we divide each thing by 4, it's going to turn into this. X squared minus 4x plus y squared minus 6y. That was all of these divided by 4. Negative 51 divided by 4 becomes negative 12.75. So this is going to be our equation right now. Now, like before, we'll group our x pieces together and our y pieces together. It looks like that. When we're completing the square, taking half of this, so negative 2, square that, so negative 2 times negative 2, positive 4, plus 4 right here. Same thing with this piece. We're taking half of negative 6, which would be negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, so we're adding 9. If I add 4 and add 9, I have to do the same over here, add 4 and add 9. Now, negative 12.75 plus 4 and then plus 9, that all comes out to 0.25, or if you'd rather it be a fraction, that's the same as 1/4. So, again, factoring this out, that's going to be x minus 2 squared, because we're asking what number multiplied together and added together would give us those two pieces. Oh, I'm going to get rid of this. So that's going to be negative 2 and negative 2. For this one, it's what two numbers would multiply to 9 and add to negative 6. So that's the negative 3 and negative 3. So x minus 2 squared, y minus 3 squared equals 0.25, or again, remember that's like 1/4. So this is our equation for the circle, and it's in standard form. Now remember, 0.25, or 1/4, equals 0.5 squared, or 1/2 times 1/2. So, if that's true then, our center for this one is going to be at 2, 3, because we have minus 2 and minus 3. And the radius is going to be 1/2, or 0.5, because it's 0.5 squared. And that all came from this equation. And that'll end it for our video.